Welcome everybody this morning. Um, we're now into the birth of Moses here in 68 in the Book of Jasher. We saw the miracles that God Almighty has done for his people and the children there, and all the reasoning of Pharaoh and his henchmen and all the citizens of Egypt and how they justified exterminating or diminishing Israel, their fearfulness when no one's chasing them, and this demonic procedure, this pride in their heart, and their counsel with the great sorcerer, who was a sorcerer from the time he was a child, Balaam, famous sorcerer. So, if someone can't believe that God could do this for Israel, listen, you got a lot of growing to do. You're a carnal Christian, and that's not a Christian at all. There are no limitations to what God can do for his people. And we must remember that. We must have that faith as we head into the greatest protection of all time that God's going to have against Satan as he overthrows the world government today, as he threw Pharaoh and his henchmen and his horsemen and his soldiers into the drink at the Red Sea. All right, and he gives everybody there in Egypt a great attitude adjustment, whether they like it or not. We got plenty of descriptions of that here in the Bible and in the history book. The Wisdom of Solomon gives a great expose of what it was like for these people and their mystery school doctrine, their love of the fallen angels, their Nephilim type pharaohs that they ended up with. So that is not some special thing that God does miracles. Look, he created everything with his word, okay? So there should be no problem believing what God can do here, okay? You make of it, though, what you will. I know what I think of it, and I know what the people here at the table think of it. So here in 68, we have Moses being born despite this attempted destruction, diminishing, or eugenics movement of Egypt. In 1 in 68 in Jasher, it says, and it was at that time the Spirit of God was upon Miriam, the daughter of Amram, the sister of Aaron, and she went forth and prophesied about the house, saying, behold, a son will be born unto us from my father and mother this time, and he will save Israel from the hands of Egypt. So there she is, full of the Holy Ghost. And when Amram heard the words of his daughter, he went and took his wife back to the house, after he had driven her away at the time when Pharaoh ordered every male child of the house of Jacob to be thrown into the water. See? They should have rebelled right there with this. But they were sucked into the government here. If you want to call it government, I call it dictatorship. And there's a big difference. Okay, it says in 3, so Amram took Jochebed, his wife, 3 years after he had driven her away, and he came to her, and she conceived. All right, here we have Moses being born. And at the end of 7 months from her conception, she brought forth a son, and the whole house was filled with great light as of the light of the sun and moon at the time of their shining. No, it's 7 months. See, that's the Shabul, folks. That is the sacred 7 there as a sign, okay? That's just what it is. 7 is sacred in our doctrine. And when the woman saw the child, that it was good and pleasing to the sight, she hid it for 3 months in an inner room. In those days, the Egyptians conspired to destroy all the Hebrews there. And the Egyptian women went to Goshen, where the children of Israel were, and they carried their young ones upon their shoulders, their babes who could not yet speak. Period. And in those days, when the women of the children of Israel brought forth, each woman had hidden her son from before the Egyptians, that the Egyptians might not know of their bringing forth, and might not destroy them from the land. Now, what do you call these abortion mills out here? What do you call giving these kids a jab when they're born? And then at 18 months. You know what's ironic about jabbing them at 18 months? That's when the Satanists start their trauma-based programming that they do to people. When they have a child, they torture that baby at 18 months old. How do you like that? And that starts their psychological programming. It's trauma-based programming, and that's what Satanists do. How do you like that? They're going to defend our right to free speech? Ha! They better fix themselves. They're going to destroy all the children. And the Egyptian women came to Goshen, and their children who could not speak were upon their shoulders. And when an Egyptian woman came into the house of a Hebrew woman, her babe began to cry. And when it cried, the child was in the inner room, answered it. So the Egyptian women went and told it at the house of Pharaoh. And that's another thing that it takes for a world government dictatorship to survive. And that is a bunch of tattletales. Okay? 11, and Pharaoh sent his officers to take the children to slay them. Thus did the Egyptians to the Hebrew women all the days. And it was at that time, about 3 months from Jochebed's concealment of her son, that the thing was known in Pharaoh's house. And the woman hastened to take away her son before the officers came. And she took for him an ark of bulrushes. Notice the ark, folks. And dabbed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. And his sister Miriam stood afar off to know what would be done to him and what would become of her words. Okay? So now, remember we said Miriam and Aaron were great helpers to Moses? Miriam's getting started here, isn't she? Prophesying about him and then spying it out to see what happens. There she goes. 15, and God sent forth at that time a terrible heat in the land of Egypt, which burned up the flesh of man like the sun in his circuit, and it greatly oppressed the Egyptians. Okay, the sun in its circuit. What is a circuit? It is a course. It is not willy-nilly flying through a void in heaven. That also came from the Egyptian mystery school, from Pythagoras, one of the Egyptian so-called philosophers. He didn't really invent it, but he gets the credit for it in the mystery schools. They're the ones that laid out this fake environment, but it's not real. The sun is in its course, and that is a circular course around the firmament of the earth. Like it or lump it, if you believe NASA, you believe lies. Grow up. Grow up. That's all I can say. That's 2 words for you. You believe NASA? You better grow up. The ones that have just now admitted that those 50 years of arguing over their fake films of the moon landing are fake, they admit it now. But now they're on the south side of the moon, on the South Pole, hunting for water up there. Yeah, right, okay. Yeah, you Nazis. There's the sun in his circuit. It can't be denied. It's all through the Bible. Either believe NASA or the Bible. Everybody makes their choice. And most people are going to believe NASA as they move the goalpost, and you can't argue with science, and on they go, just changing it as they need to. Hey, we argued and made fun of people and attacked people for saying those films were fake, and they put out propaganda and just kept going and going. And now, after 50 years, we admit we were lying. And we're supposed to believe them now. Okay, folks, and I'll believe Fauci this time around as he comes with that needle. I seen the needle and the damage done, folks. Stay away from the needle. So here we have the sun, which obeys God, and there's an angel in that sun. It's oppressing the Egyptians. And all the Egyptians went down to bathe in the river on account of the consuming heat which burned up their flesh. And Bethia, the daughter of Pharaoh, went also to bathe in the river, owing to the consuming heat, and her maidens walked at the riverside, and all the women of Egypt as well. And that's another thing in the occult. They love to split the women and men. You'll notice that. See, the women are all together in a big pack. And that way the occultist priest, he can control everybody, women against men at times. It's used over and over. In 18, and Bethia lifted up her eyes to the river, and she saw the ark upon the water, and sent her maid to fetch it. And she opened it, and saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. She had compassion on him, and she said, "This is one of the Hebrew children." And all the women of Egypt walking on the river side desired to give him suck, but he would not suck. For this thing was from the Lord, in order to restore him to his mother's breast. And Miriam, his sister, was at that time amongst the Egyptian women at the riverside. Well, she's pretty slick, ain't she? And she saw this thing, and she said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and fetch a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee?" 22, and Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." And the young woman went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to Jochebed, "Take this child away and suckle it for me, and I will pay thee thy wages, 2 bits of silver daily." And the woman took the child and nursed it. 24. And at the end of 2 years, when the child grew up, she brought him to the daughter of Pharaoh, and he was unto her as a son. And she called his name Moses, for she said, "Because I drew him out of the water." 25. And Miriam his sister called him Jared, for she in 25, and Amram his father called his name Chabar, for he said it was for him that he associated with his wife, whom he had turned away. And Jochebed, his mother, called his name Jecthuel, because she said, I have hoped for him to be the Almighty, and God restored him unto me. 27. And Miriam his sister called him Jared, for she descended after him to the river to know what his end would be. Boy, she was a help there. 28. And Aaron his brother called his name Abi Zanuck, saying, My father left my mother and returned to her on his account. 29. And Kehath, the father of Amram, called Kehath, the father of Amram, called his name Abigdor. It'd be Abigdor, because on his account did God repair the breach of the house of Jacob, that they should no longer throw their male children into the river. Now that was the big idea of Balaam, and who his religion was called Balak, and the king that tried to hire him there with Moab was called Balak. His name is Balaam, son of Beor, and that was his big idea with all his wisdom. Of this throwing the male children into the water. 30. And the nurse called him Abisako, saying, In his tabernacle was he hidden for 3 months on account of the children of Ham. Again, I would just explain the bloodlines. Ham, the disgusting person that did the terrible act there and got cursed for that act, walking in there, homosexual and also incestual, and against his parents and family. 31. And all Israel called his name Shemaiah, son of Nathaniel, for they said, In his days has God heard their cries and rescued them from their oppressors. And Moses was in Pharaoh's house, and was unto Bathia, Pharaoh's daughter, as a son, and Moses grew up amongst the king's children. Now, this oppression, this attack on Israel goes on here. And first we got a little look at Edom here in their history in 69 as this goes on. It says here, And the king of Edom died in those days in the 18th year of his reign, and was buried in his temple, which he had built for himself as his royal residence in the land of Edom. All right, so here's the Edomites, and that is what? The house of Esau. And the children of Esau sent to Pithor, which is upon the river, and they fetched from there a young man of beautiful eyes and comely aspect, whose name was Saul, and they made him king over them in the place of Shamlah. And Saul reigned over the children of Esau in the land of Edom for 40 years. in 4, and when Pharaoh, king of Egypt, saw that the counsel which Balaam had advised respecting the children of Israel did not succeed, but that still they were fruitful, multiplied, and increased throughout the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh commanded in those days that a proclamation should be issued throughout Egypt to the children of Israel, saying, "No man shall diminish anything of his daily labor." Okay, and what's missing here is the stubble. See, they put straw in their bricks, and that's one of the few places where stubble is actually the plant waste product itself. Usually it's used as a similitude, but in this case, that's part of this proclamation. And the man who shall be found deficient in his labor, which he performs daily, whether in mortar or in bricks, then his youngest son shall be put in their place. In the place of what? In the place of the bricks. What does that mean? They're what? Going to cement him right into the wall. Am I right or wrong?
Right.
Yeah, good old mystery school people. In 7, and the labor of Egypt strengthened upon the children of Israel in those days. And behold, if one brick was deficient in any man's daily labor, the Egyptians took his youngest boy by force from his mother and put him into the building in the place of the brick, which his father had left wanting. So there you are, they kill your youngest child. In 8, and the men of Egypt did so to all the children of Israel day by day, all the days for a long period. But the tribe of Levi, here, I love this, but the tribe of Levi did not at that time work with the Israelites, their brethren, from the beginning, for the children of Levi knew the cunning of the Egyptians, which they exercised at first toward the Israelites, and everyone else went along with them. But there's a remnant that did not. And I look at what's going on today. Look at the attack on children. Look at them going to 3-year-olds and saying, you need to change your sex. You can't. What it does is mutilate you. You can't make a fake woman's part. Okay? It never heals down there. That child is mutilated for life. He's messed up for life. And the same with what they do to the young girls. It is not a joke. It is pure torture. Then we go to the jab, where they actually, if you go to their websites, these places, the Pfizer places, the doctors, they admit they don't think this stuff works. But you have all these child deaths coming. Not only that, but you also have them where they'll never reproduce. See, this is the same thought pattern, because, as you notice, no one rejected Balaam when he came with all his mystery school doctrine. You understand me? No king said, "Get away from me, you mystery school man, worshiper of the fallen angels, occult sorcerer, get away." No, they treasured him. So you see how world governments across the firmament of the earth, except Israel, always had this type of little r religion. And you see, religion is an earthly term. Okay, show me in the Bible, table people, where Paul talked about this great religion. Now, don't get me wrong, there's spots where what is real religion? It's doing kindness That ain't Paul talking, but this is the Bible talking. It's an epistle um, from our apostles. And he said, well, real religion, be kind to the widow and the child and the fatherless, and don't be tainted by the world. That's real religion. But these religions, little r, are against God. And those people always end up like this. How did Stalin get to do it? How did Mao get to do it? How has the UN and the world government and Klaus Schwab and the Rothschilds, how did Hitler do it? They always use these techniques. They use lies, they use treachery. They always get the snitches on the inside, the tattletales. They get people fearful that will go along to get along. And then that keeps everything, the snowball headed to hell. And the attack is always on the children. And on the couples, on the family, on everyone else. And all of your fellow family members start turning each other in. This is the same technique being used today. It just is. Only today we got different rhetoric, but the results are still the basic foundation of this diminishing the flesh method are there. It was Fabian in method. You're seeing it now as it's progressed. Yeah, we see it. And God sees it too. And you Rothschilds, you better remember that. Your judgment is coming for what you're doing to these children and babies out of the womb.